Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second day of the TCC Fall Communities or Fall Conference. My name is Deborah Harrison. I'm with the Aviation, Space, and Defense Division, one of the sponsors, and I'm pleased to introduce the keynote speaker this morning. From your packet, we do have a substitution today. Unfortunately, Mr. Frank Culberson was not able to be here today because of the launch incident earlier in the week. However, he asked Dave Swanson to come for him and talk to us today. David joined Orbital in May of 2011 as the Senior Director for Safety and Mission Assurance. He is responsible for the leadership and management of Orbital's safety, quality, and mission assurance professionals working on the company's satellite programs for the Space Systems Group and the Advanced Programs Group. He also leads the Occupational Operational Safety Departments, Configuration Management, and Orbital's ISO AS9100 program. Dave interfaces directly with Orbital's Launch Systems Group to determine corporate S&MA policies and initiatives. He is entrusted with managing the Corporate Executive Steering Committee and facilitates the Senior Corrective Action Board. Before joining Orbital, Colonel Retired Swanson served in the United States Air Force until July of 2011. Colonel Swanson's last assignment was as the Director of Engineering, Space and Missile Systems Center, Los Angeles Air Force Base, California, and as the center's Chief Engineer. Originally from Libertyville, Illinois, young Mr. Swanson earned his commission in 1986 after graduating from Southern Illinois University with a degree in electrical engineering. Lieutenant Colonel Swanson was stationed at the United States Air Force Academy, where he was an assistant professor for astronautics, was the advisor in charge of the Space Operations Major, and he holds master's degrees from the Air Force Institute of Technology in Space Operations, from the University of Colorado in Electrical Engineering, and from Air University in Military Arts and Sciences. David Swanson.
Thank you. Good morning. Second day of the conference, always the best day, right? The first day you're trying to get into it, you're very excited, you know, the information's not coming fast enough. The second day the information's coming too fast, right? And then, of course, there's all the amusement parks that are just waiting for your weekend, right? So this should be a good introduction to that. We've been showing a video here for the last couple of minutes. These are different steps in the journey you go through to get to a launch or to get to a capability. And Frank Culberson was going to be here. He was very unhappy to not come because he loves coming to talk in front of people. He's an astronaut. They live for this kind of thing. I think his wife, he gives a speech before he goes to bed every night just to, you know, stay up with things. But he really wanted to come, and when he had to cancel because of the recent incident, let me ask, how many people have seen the incident on TV? Yeah. And I don't want to make light of that. That's a catastrophic failure for our company, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. These videos show what it should look like. And so I just need to make the disclaimer that I can't really go into what happened. I don't know to begin with. It was only 3 days ago. And some of you may have been sitting in different technical sessions where they talked about the process that we would go through in the aerospace industry to get to the bottom of these kinds of things. And it takes weeks, if not months, to figure out what went wrong. They're very complicated systems. So my disclaimer is please don't ask me questions about that because I don't want to be rude and tell you I can't tell you or I don't know. But this presentation, which is almost identical to what Frank was going to give, was about this wonderful machine that we built and how we got there and the quality behind it. And just because we had an incident with a launch vehicle does not distract from the fact it's still an exquisite machine. It still has wonderful capabilities. And I'm going to talk about those capabilities today, but space is hard. And this just reminds us that space is very difficult. So some of you are in the aerospace space industry. Can I see by hands how many people already know more than I do? So, I only have a couple. And then, so those of you who are new to space, put your hands up. Like that. All right, good, good, good. That means I can lie a little bit and you won't know, right? Okay. So let me see if I can stop this. Start that. So Frank wanted to talk about the gift of quality, and since I am the Senior Director for Safety and Mission Assurance, that includes quality in the aerospace industry. And so quality is a gift, as you all know. It's something you work very hard at. It's something that you have to keep your eye on. And any given day, somebody can have a bad day and end up with a quality problem. And following up and making sure that we fix those quality problems, find them and fix them, is important. And our company is no different than any other company, except that we produce 3 or 4 systems a year rather than hundreds of them. So it's a unique environment we live in. I'm going to go through just an introduction on the gift of quality, overview of orbital sciences, and then talk about how we bake in mission success. I think I've switched those, by the way. I'm going to talk about how we bake in mission success, and then go into resupplying the International Space Station. I retract that. That is the order we're going to go in. Okay. I was up late last night, making it a little bit different for me. So quality is non-value added. I was sent an email once and somebody said, quality is non-value added, and I just got really upset. I said, what do you mean quality is non-value added? And my boss had to say, calm down, Dave. In lean thinking, it's a non-value added activity. You don't increase the value of the product. And I had to think about that for some time. And if you think about it a little bit, you end up with, well, quality is a necessary non-value added activity, because we do have bad days, because materials don't act the way we thought they would, because our margins aren't always where we want it to be. So I now tell people quality is a cost avoidance activity. It is essential because every day we are making, there are problems that are arising, and that's going to cost the company. And so if quality isn't there, those costs will be incurred in the future. And that's the only way I can get program managers to remember that quality is everybody's job. We're doing this for a reason, and you do not want to pay later what you can get rid of today. So if quality is a gift, what does it give us? Well, it gives us the specified performance, it reduces cost, and it makes sure that your delivery is on time. And that's essential. So that's the gift that we all give to our companies. I want to give you an idea of what Orbital does to realize a product. In the upper left-hand corner, I think we have a pointer. Upper left-hand corner, we start with a design. Now that design starts with the user's needs and the requirements, and then once we have a design, we break it into the parts that we're going to build and the parts we're going to buy. And once we do all that in the space industry, we bring it together, we assemble it into a large system, we test the system, we transport it to the launch site, we go ahead and integrate it, launch it, and then operate it on orbit. That's the process we go through. So what can go wrong with quality? What are the forces that are driving us to not have quality? Well, there's the need to make it quicker. And my company's niche in the marketplace are small and medium satellites and launch vehicles that have the quality and are quick to market. That's where we fit. So every day, my program managers are trying to move faster and faster to get our product to market. The consumer electronic industry has had an influence on my workforce, and I would imagine on the workforce of my peers, in that every cell phone can be dropped and kicked, and if it breaks, you just go get another one. And anybody have kids who have broken the screen? And they have no respect for the electronics that are in these things. The problem with space is that if you happen to drop it, you may not have a problem until you're on orbit. And so I have a workforce that is used to a robust electronics industry, and when we're working with exquisite kinds of technology and boards that are sensitive and have to survive space, they can't handle it the way they would their normal electronics. So that works against us. The pressure to reduce cost and to meet the demand for lower prices is always there. The market is contracting. We're trying to get more and more bandwidth from orbit to Earth in our commercial market. We're trying to give the military more and more capability, but the government budgets are dropping, so there's always pressure there, and then there's schedule pressure in order to get it through design, and then on the factory floor where our technicians are told, get it faster, 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 and then, of course, there's always paperwork to fill out, but that paperwork seems like it's non-value added, so sometimes they spend less time filling it out. So these are the things that are working against us in the industry, and we have to push back. We have to hold the line and say these are all value added, if you will, to our business. Space is a one strike and you're out. Not one strike for the company, but one strike for the vehicle. These vehicles take 24 months to 5 years to build. If you have an incident on the launch pad, as we did, you're out. Our next vehicle, and this is a production line with the Cygnus, our next vehicle won't be ready until February of next year, and the astronauts need cargo. Thankfully, our customer, NASA, has an architecture, has a strategy where they have multiple suppliers. And any one of those suppliers can have a bad day. And we just showed that. But our peers, if you will, SpaceX and the Japanese as well as the Russians, will all help to resupply the space station. So they'll pick up where we couldn't make it this time. And one day, we will do the same for them. So we had a speaker at the Mission Assurance Improvement Workshop. Is that not supposed to be there? Okay. Dr. Ballhaus. And he put this graphic up that I thought was fairly telling. Remember, if you take a look at the bottom, these are the 90s. And in the 90s, the government drew down their budgets. NASA wanted to do faster, cheaper. Why did I forget that? Faster, cheaper, better. And the military wanted to do TSPR, Total System Program Responsibility. And so they drew money out, as you see here, but we started getting more and more failures. As a matter of fact, it was $11 billion of launch failures in the late 90s. And what we learned from that was that there is a level below which you will incur more and more problems. And so throughout the first decade of the new millennium, we worked very, very hard in the military to beef up the mission assurance side of things, to put standards back in place, to ensure that the quality of our products were where they needed to be. Now we're at the end of that decade, and guess what's happening again? There's a desire to pull that money out. There's a desire to make things faster. And so if we don't learn from this lesson here, we will be back where we were before. And so my community, the national security space community, where we do mission assurance, we have to work against that trend or make sure that we right-size quality and mission assurance so we meet the needs of the business, but we also make sure that this doesn't happen again. To do that, the space industry has put together a community, if you will, that starts at the top. The Defense Space Council, which is being reworked in the last couple of years, sits at the top and makes some decisions, and then there's a number of different forums. The Space Quality Improvement Council, the Space Supplier Council, the Mission Assurance Improvement Council, and then the Joint Mission Assurance Council, which is just government. And that's where NASA, the NRO, DOD talk together about making standards and making sure that we have the quality products that we need in the future. So like this forum, where we cross industries, this is industry specific. And so those are kinds of things you all need to be part of. You need to be involved in your industry, whether it's the health industry, whether it's electronics industry, automotive. You need to find that way that you can tailor all of these lessons learned, all these guidance documents for your industry to make sure that the quality is there when your company or your customer needs it. So let me talk a little bit about Orbital Sciences Corporation. Not many people know about Orbital. We like to go by Orbital. We are going to merge with ATK in the coming months, and so we'll be Orbital ATK, so we are growing. It'll give us a more vertical integrated capability, but today we're just Orbital. We're a small to medium-sized provider of space products. We've been around for 32 years. Our first product was the Pegasus air-launched vehicle. Came off the bottom of an L-1011. We've had that for many years, and it launches small spacecraft. This next graphic shows you the diversity of systems that we provide. On the left, we have the earth sciences through space systems, all the way to the right where we go to human space. And that's the system I'm going to talk about today. We provide them in low Earth orbit and geostationary orbit that's close to the Earth, so you circle the Earth every 90 minutes, or if you're in geostationary, you sit over one spot of the Earth all the time, and that's ideal for communication satellites. But you can see that our power levels are at 7.5 kilowatts is our newest offering, and we have price ranges that can meet just about any pocketbook. Most of our customers will choose Orbital as one part of its strategy to provide services for its customers. So if we go to a communications company, they might buy a large satellite from Space Systems Loral, Boeing, or Lockheed, but they would come to us for the smaller ones, and they would fit in gaps, thereby spreading their risk out. They're worried about quality as well, so they have a risk strategy, and we fit into that. We've launched over 1,000 satellites and launch vehicles, so we do both, the satellites and the launch vehicles. We've had 218 satellites and space systems. So a satellite is something that goes around the Earth. A space system is something that would leave the Earth's area. So we have some satellites that have gone deep space. We have one that's approaching Ceres, the largest asteroid in the asteroid belt. And it has left another asteroid about 9 months ago and is moving through the asteroid belt to go and look at a larger, what they call a protoplanet. And then we produce target vehicles and sounding rockets. And the target vehicles are used by the military MDA in order to test out their defense system against inbound intercontinental ballistic missiles or medium-range ballistic missiles. And then we have sounding rockets that we do a lot of those for NASA that does upper atmospheric science. We're a small company. We're only 3,700 people now. When we do merge with ATK, we'll be 13,000 people. But we have 2 million square feet of state-of-the-art facilities. When you build satellites, you need a lot of room, and we do have that. You can see our revenue there and the backlog that we have. This is not about money, so I'll move quickly through that. We have a large number of customers, so we deal with international customers as well as domestic, the civil side and the military side of the government. You can see that we are fairly well-balanced, about a third, and a third in each of those different market areas, and that gives us a lot of strength in that if one of these market areas were to drop, we can pick it up with a second. So I don't know why that keeps coming up. So as I say, we do launch vehicles, space systems, and advanced programs. Those are special kinds of studies that our customers want. This is a different pie chart than the one you saw before. It just shows that our launch vehicles are 40%, the larger part of it. And then our space systems, if you combine them, is larger than launch vehicles, but they're in two different pieces. So what is safety and mission assurance? There are three groups in orbital sciences. The group that handled the launch the other day is the launch systems group. And my peer in that group, Charlie Whitmire, is working on the accident investigation board and so on. And so meanwhile, I sit between these two groups in space systems and advanced programs and in technical operations. Technical operations is engineering operations, supply chain, and then my group, safety and mission assurance. And I'll get into each of these functions that my group provides to the organization so you have an idea of why am I up here, why am I representing quality? Well, quality, internal and supplier quality, is one of my functions. And I have to couple that with safety, configuration management, specialty engineering. We have today, as Orbital, we have a large number of facilities around the country. We have our headquarters in Dulles, and this building in the back, this white building, is where we build satellites. There are many people in the Northern Virginia area did not know that satellites were built in their backyard. And we do that here, and we do it out at Gilbert, which we bought from General Dynamics several years ago. So we have two capabilities to build satellites, and then we build our launch vehicles in Chandler, and we send them out to either Vandenberg or Wallops, which is where our Antares rocket comes from, and it's integrated there. We'll talk more about this facility. Our targets are built in, our interceptors are built in Huntsville, And then we have offices in the, I'm sorry, this is Vandenberg here, and then in the Los Angeles area. So that's where we are today. This gives you an overview that we have commercial, scientific exploration, and then national systems. These are the space systems we have. Gives you an idea of our success rate. Now remember, these are satellites, and the the incident that happened a couple of days ago wouldn't be included here because it was a launch incident. And these are our launch systems. So space lift vehicles, these are the ones that go to space. They take space products up. And then strategic launch, which would be either IRBMs, MRBMs, and then the targets, as well as sounding rockets. So that's an overview of orbital. Hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. You know, I'm not Lockheed, I'm not Boeing. We aren't that big, but we certainly fill a niche in the community. And we have all the same challenges that those companies have. So let's talk about how do we get mission success into our systems. I put this up here, there's some definitions. Mission success is always determined at the end of a mission. Did we succeed? Did we provide the customer the product they wanted? That's quality, right? Quality is defined as giving the customer the level of product that they expected, that they paid for. And so mission success is another way to say that. But you can't determine mission success to the end of the mission. So mission assurance are the activities that you do to get confidence you will achieve mission success. There's risk involved in that. And of course, it's making sure that not only quality folks, but also engineering and program management are doing their jobs. And so that's what the overall mission assurance job is. We'll talk a little bit about COTS and CRS today. A program that NASA put together to create a capability, a commercial capability. They actually picked 3 companies, one of which dropped out and left SpaceX and Orbital in the running. And so they invested in the capability so that there would be a commercial capability to provide supplies to the International Space Station. The CRS, cargo resupply missions, were the follow-on. So now that we have a capability, now we provide it as a commodity. So the incident that happened a couple of days ago was not a government activity, it was a commercial activity. And so unlike a government launch, we as a company are in charge of the act, whereas if it were a government or a NASA launch, they would be in charge of it because it's their hardware. What this shows, though, is that Cygnus has been very, very successful. That's the vehicle that sits on top of the rocket. We've been able to rendezvous and berth and bring cargo to the International Space Station in a new and unique way, and we'll talk about why that is new and unique. And our dedication to quality has brought us down this road. We were actually 18 months behind our peer, SpaceX, because we were chosen after the first company dropped out. They couldn't produce on the COTS program, and yet we were only a couple of months behind SpaceX in our first flight. What this shows is that our safety record is as good, or is much better than our peers in the guidance, navigation, and space vehicle industry. So this is the line down, these bars on the bottom show that we're lower. So I just had to put a plug in for the safety side of my business. So quality starts with management. Our quality management system, we have a third-party organization. D&V is one of many that you can go out and get. And then we have a multi-site cert. This also shows that we are engaged in the industry. We're engaged with ASQ. We're engaged with the QLF, the JPAC. Do you recognize these terms? The Joint Audit Planning Committee, NASA puts that together. And what our suppliers have said is, how come every one of the primes show up any day they want, and they're all asking the same question? Can't you put them together and have them come in one day, and you all share? So NASA said, well, okay, we'll organize that. And so it's a voluntary thing. They do a couple a year because while suppliers want that to happen, when you actually ask them if they would like this army of people to come in one day, they usually say, well, no, not today. And so it leaves the primes to go off and do their audits anyway. But it's marginally successful. When I say marginally, the larger idea of all suppliers should be seen once by many primes. They haven't followed through on that, but when they do come in, it's extremely successful for that supplier because they see the folks come in, The folks look at things, and then they all leave with an understanding of what that supplier can do. And then there's the Space Quality Improvement Council, the Mission Assurance Improvement Council, and then there's a summit once every year. We're also a member of the GIDEP, and we ensure that our suppliers are members of GIDEPs as well. This is our process for continuous improvement. We start on the bottom with nonconformances, and we work through FRBs and MRBs, failure review boards, and material review boards, both of which follow the same kind of process of containment, root cause, corrective actions, and follow-up. And this is really focused on the hardware at hand. If I happen to have a gizmo that is required for my satellite, I'll run through this until my box or my reaction wheel or my actuator or my computer is fixed. When I'm done, the program moves on. So there are other programs that are using the same kind of hardware, so we have to ask ourselves, do other programs use that hardware? And if it does, then let's promote it to a corrective action, a much higher level kind of nonconformance failure review board, and then we put it into a number of different corrective action boards that are functionally aligned, and then they're all coordinated through kind of an integrated enterprise corrective action board. If our customers have a problem with what we're doing and they say, we don't like what you're doing, we have something called a CPAR. You may have heard that before, Corrective Preventative Action Request, and this is the highest level of problem that we would have in the company, and this spans the entire company. So that's our process. It's much like other people's processes, but if I were to take this flow we talked about, and I were to take metrics along this flow, I might be able to put together something called a containment matrix. Across the top are the locations where you produce value. Down the side are locations where you produce value. They're exactly the same. If I happen to find a nonconformance in a center that produced it, I will have the number right here along the diagonal. I have contained it. We all know that if we can find the problem as soon as it's, the defect, as soon as it's made, that's the cheapest time to fix it. Anything that falls below it in this area is more expensive. And so you can see these numbers along the column. These are bad. And so what I'm going to show you, kind of watch these numbers on the bottom change right here. I'm going to show you that over a year and a half, we've been able to work very hard at that and identify where those are coming from and reduce those. That's an improvement in quality. And this is a nice graphic, and we call it a containment chart. I've talked to other folks, and I was surprised to hear that this is not an industry standard, but it gives your managers a really nice visual as to what are the problems, where are they coming from? Well, they're coming from design, and they're coming out of our vendors. All right, and we're finding them at launch. Okay, so we really want to push them back out. And so as quality professionals, this is the kind of metric that you might use in order to improve your products if you have this kind of manufacturing flow. I'm also privileged to be in charge of this failure analysis lab. It's critical to doing failure review boards, and we dig into the circuitry, we dig into materials to find out what's wrong. Can it handle launch? Can it handle space? And I have a number of capabilities here, but I'm not going to go through each and every one of them. We also have a EEE parts program. We select materials based on our heritage program. So if we've flown these things before, we have higher confidence in it, so we want to stay with those products. Whenever we bring a new product in, it's always a guess as to whether it's going to work or not. And so we want to make sure that we have higher confidence. And then we make sure that our process and workman standards are up to our customers' needs. I think I've run out of battery. But as a true professional, I have a backup. So this one's red. So we also do worry about our suppliers. Supplier assurance is supplier quality is another way to talk about it, and we do audits on them. We found that we had an individual who was doing paper audits. Our suppliers were filling out the paper audits and sending them in, and they were looking great. When he left the company, I had a new individual come in and he said, you know, we should go out and look at these folks. I said, yes, we should. How come we haven't? And when we went out to talk to our suppliers, we found a lot of problems that we didn't like, and we let them know that our standards were higher. And so there is no substitute for going to your suppliers and looking them in the eye and asking them questions. You must do that. And while people will say, that costs money, that's a flight, maybe if it's overseas and you've got a supplier out there, it's going to cost a lot more money, you need to do it. We all need to do it. And I say that because when any of my peers goes out and does it with one of my suppliers, they're helping me. And when I do it, I'm helping them. Because now we know, the suppliers know that these primes have a higher level of expectation. And so whatever industry you're in, you need to talk to your peers in a non-programmatic way and get them to help you as you help them by talking to your suppliers. That's my message there. And take it back to your managers. It's a great investment. The suppliers love it too, because they have all the same pressures we do of driving down costs and eliminating process, and sometimes the process is value added, and you need to go back in there and tell them, no, don't get rid of that review, don't get rid of that, that quality step, because we need it. In our manufacturing integration and test, we CM our product, and we do traceability. We create end item data packages that come to us from our suppliers, and then we have to provide it to our customers as well. All right, that's the dry stuff. Let's talk about some of the cool space stuff, where we have lots of pictures, and we're very proud of this space system that I'm going to talk to you about, and I'll try to interject where our quality efforts have been. The International Space Station is known by a lot of folks. You can actually see it outside if you look in the right place. Not many people know or remember what it took to build. And so at this point in the presentation, I see a couple of heads nodding. So I'm going to put a movie up. And this is going to be how the space station was built in 2 minutes. So it's not my movie. I ripped it off from the internet. But the neat thing about this movie is it shows that in 2001, we started building things, modular. We started exploring how we can work in space. How do we bring things up? The space shuttle was a great workhorse vehicle, and while it's retired today, it is the reason this thing was put together. And what you'll notice is that the solar arrays and these radiators, they're orthogonal to each other, keep getting moved around. As the engineers came up with the process to put together this wonderful machine we have in the sky, the fact that it's an international space station, the fact that humanity built this, and this could not operate for as many years as it has without the quality that NASA has put in place, without the attention to detail. It did cost money. This is not cheap, but this is unique. The Chinese are beginning to think, hey, we can do that too, but this is 14 years later. We've showed that you can put together a very large structure in space, that you can keep it manned, even after sequestration. After sequestration, where we went down from 6 astronauts to 2 astronauts and kept it in kind of just a low level of manning. We were back up to 6 astronauts in there, and it's still producing great science. I read an article the other day that they had more science that they want to take to the station than the astronauts have hours in a day to do it. Now, not many people know that. They think, oh, this is like simple stuff. No, it's not simple, and it takes a long time, and the astronauts not only have to maintain this wonderful machine, but they have to do the science on board. And they have to deal with the effects of free fall, not zero gravity. There's 99.9% of the gravity you and I feel here in space. It's free fall. Everything is falling at the same rate around the Earth. It's missing the Earth, thankfully, and that's what an orbit is. So this is a wonderful space station, and we should all be proud that our country led the way. There's some statistics here. It's 290 feet long. It's the size of a football field. It's almost 472,000 kilograms in mass. So it's a big structure. Resupplying it is very, very important. They don't generate anything on the space station. You can't go outside and pick up grass and dirt, and you can't get water. You have to bring it up, and when you use it, you have to get rid of it. If you push it out push it outside, it's just going to float out there with you. so you have to get rid of it. And that's why the Cygnus space vehicle is so nice. It can bring cargo to the station, and then most of what the station needs, we don't need back here on Earth. So what we do is we atomize it. That's another term for, it burns up. And it just redistributes it to the entire world in small atoms. So there is a need to bring some experiments back, and that's where SpaceX's capability, HTV's capability is there. So that's the niche we fill, is the Cygnus space vehicle, sometimes called Orb 1 through 6, or 1 through 8 today. This is the current configuration of the space vehicle, and it was put together under the COTS program, the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services program. That's where NASA invested in us, and now we are selling them back under the Commercial Resupply Services. There's the early incarnation, which is Orb 1, D1, Orb 1, Orb 2, and Orb 3. Orb 3 was the vehicle that we had on the pad the other day. Orb D1, Orb 1, and Orb 2 all made it successfully to the International Space Station. This is Orb 4. You can see that the payload cargo module is much longer, and that the solar arrays are higher capability, and they deploy in a different way than these panels. So we're going to move from, when you talk about space vehicles, you talk about their capability. We're going to be up at 3.5 kilowatts with these new solar arrays, and then of course we're going to get more cargo capacity. This is what Antares looks like. It launches from Wallops Orbital in collaboration with Mars. That's the Mid-Atlantic Space Authority, who built this launch pad on the bottom for us at Wallops. We are the first large launch vehicle to go out of Wallops, and if you don't know where Wallops is, it's in Virginia. It's just east of DC, a little bit south. And so you can see this vehicle lifting off at night from the DC area, which has some advantages when you are talking to your senators about the space program. It's far enough away that a problem like we had doesn't affect people in DC, but it really has opened up space, and Wallops is a wonderful place to operate from, and we're the only ones so far that are using that pad. There's two parts to this vehicle. There's the pressurized cargo module. This is the piece that actually docks with the station, and the astronauts get in and they pull the cargo out. I'll show you a picture of that. The bottom is the service module. This is where all the brains, the propulsion, the attitude control, the power comes from. And we build them in two pieces, and I'll show those two pieces in a minute. And then we integrate them together, put them inside the rocket. This is inside the fairing. The fairing is required to keep the vehicle safe as we go through the atmosphere. Many people don't know, but the worst part of a satellite's life is the launch. Coming from Earth to space, that 10-15 minutes of going through the atmosphere is the worst time for a satellite. And so you have to create a satellite that can handle the acoustic loads as well as the static and dynamic loads that they're subjected to. This is the Antares launch vehicle. We built this vehicle for the Cygnus program, and it's our first liquid-fueled rocket. It's a two-stage rocket, so this is the chemical bottom, and then we have a solid rocket motor on the top that we get from ATK. This is the Wallops Island facility. We integrate the service module here to the payload cargo module in this building. We take it over and we fuel it. Before we put them together, we fill it up with cargo, and what they basically do is they push this in, and once one side is full, they rotate it and they put it in again, allowing gravity to help them. And so once it's filled, we close the hatch, and there is a time when we reopen the hatch just before we take it to the pad for late loads, for things that are perishable. For instance, if we have an ant farm, we call them the antstronauts. And we'll put fruit and so on. So once we do that up north, we then bring it down to this vertical integration facility. Well, I'll show you a picture of what we do there. And here's the launch pad with its fuel farm. This is where we had the problem. And as you notice, this is not habited. So this is a good place to launch from. It's protected. This is the Cygnus, or the Antares vehicle with its fairing, and this is what the Cygnus vehicle would look like inside the fairing as they're putting the fairing on. It all fits nicely together. And so this is the transporter erector launcher. So we integrate it vertically. We take it to the pad, horizontally. We take it to the pad horizontally, and then we erect it. So let me show you what that would look like. This is time lapse. This takes all night to do. So you can see we're pulling out of the VAB. The folks moving around are not on caffeine. This is actually time lapse. And we have to bring our lights with us. The vehicle itself, it's not fueled at this point. At this point it is unfueled, except it does have the Cygnus that's fueled on it, and it does have the ATK solid rocket motor at the top. This is the back end. You see the two engines that we get from Russia. And we integrate that onto the vehicle inside the VAB. The HIF, the Horizontal Integration Facility. And we also bring, and it's hard to see here, there's a couple of trucks in the back, and that provides the environment for the rocket, making sure that the rocket itself is cooled at the level that we need it to, is make sure that the satellite, which is the Cygnus vehicle, has the proper conditions. And so we take it up the ramp, and you saw that sign, this ramp to the International Space Station. That's this ramp. This is the highest water tower on the East Coast. It's that high because we have to get that water into the flame trench in order to protect the pad, and it just flows down into the trench, which if you were in earlier, you would have seen the launch of that. And so they'll take it there, they'll get it connected at the bottom, and then they'll erect the launch vehicle. So they're being very careful. This TEL is highly sophisticated. It's actually two trucks that can move the vehicle left and right, up and down, and they move together. They're not connected. They're just electronically connected, and so it takes a long time to erect the vehicle. So how am I doing on time? I'm a little bit behind, so let's see. So this is what the pad looks like with the vehicle sitting here. Here's that tower we were talking about, and the flame trench, and the flames come out into the water here. As the vehicle goes up and out, we have to make sure that there's nobody out in the water. Our last launch was delayed today because a sailboat had gotten in that keep-out zone because you don't want to hurt anybody. And so we had to wait a day for that. This is what the launch looks like. There's a lot of smoke. The vehicle comes off the pad, makes a small maneuver, and then goes to space. This is what the space station looks like. And then as we get closer, this is what it would look like as an image coming up to the station. When we call about this thing called, these are images, kind of latent images, I believe. And as the vehicle gets closer and closer to the International Space Station, this is what it looked like below. The two astronauts who work in the cupola would be looking at the vehicle outside the cupola. This is a nice shot of the two of them looking out. It's not a mirror. They don't look exactly alike. They're a little bit different. So basically the vehicle will come up, get grabbed by the arm, and be plugged into the station. Here it is being plugged in. And then when the astronauts open the bay, this is what the bay would look like. Very nice, very neat. They get they're very happy when this comes up, because it's like Wells Fargo showing up, and you get all your stuff. Turns out we have a number of astronauts in our company, and they like to sneak stuff in. We put M&Ms in the first one. We put some letters from their family in the second one. So this is what it looks like when they're done with it. I got to tell you, astronauts are not very clean people. They didn't pack it as nicely, but then they don't care, because basically it's going to burn up on its way down. And so this is what it looks like from the ground coming in. And so I think, do I have it? So this is the mission. Okay. Basically, we build the satellite and we integrate it. I just talked to you about where we integrate and how we integrate it. We take it to the launch pad, and it basically goes up to a certain level and boosts itself until it gets close to the space station. And then as we go very carefully as we approach the station. We do these series of burns to get closer and closer and closer, because the space station is just too important. The astronaut lives are too important for us to bump into it, if you will. And so this is coming up the R bar. And if you're an engineer, that's the vector that points at the center of the Earth, the R bar. And so as we get closer and closer, what you saw in the picture were the astronauts watching that. Once we do get there, I showed you how they go out and they grab it, they plug it in, and when they're done, they send it back to Earth. Now, I am going to show you that mission with a mixture of animation and actual video here. So this is what it looks like. Can we turn that up? So this is the first stage going off, going through the atmosphere. You can see some of the liquid nitrogen, or liquid oxygen coming out. And this is a very beautiful liftoff. We had 4 of these before last week's event. This is a camera on the back of the vehicle. We get to see Wallops down below us and the eastern seaboard. We're actually going kind of northeast to get into the right inclination. And so they'll call off how fast they're going. They've got to get up to 17,500 miles per hour in order to be in orbit. This, once we lose the first stage, it'll drop off and it'll burn up in the atmosphere. We'll lose these fairings. Off it will go. And then we have this solid rocket motor. The first part was liquid. It's liquid motors you can throttle. You can speed them up and turn and slow them down. And see these springs down here basically push it away because when you're in space, you're going at the same velocity, so you have to push the back end off. And then you light the solid rocket motor, which is the second stage. That takes you up to where you need to go. And this is what the fairing looks like for real, and we can see the Cygnus vehicle here. And then there's an inner stage piece that keeps the second stage and the first stage away from each other, and there's a motor in the center, and then we light the motor. So this is the solid rocket motor going and burning up, or burning, and you, of course, can see the Earth there as it begins to edge over and get more velocity. Now, this is just a video animation. We drop off that second stage, and we have to open up the solar arrays right away. We are running on batteries until this point, and so we need the solar energy in order to run the service module in the back. And so that's what it would look like. We don't have video of it because nobody was there when it happened, okay? And so here we are coming up. You can see, and you're going to see, okay, here comes sunrise. You're going to see it coming in this area slowly. Now, if you're getting a little bit, you're getting some vertigo, that's normal. All astronauts actually do get vertigo, space sickness, and so some of them do deal better with it than others. Once again, we're on animation, and we're going to come up to the vehicle, the International Space Station, nice and slowly up our bar. Now, we're going slower than they are, and so we're slowly increasing our speed, going higher, and actually slowing down. I'll talk about that in a minute. It's kind of a weird thing in space. The more velocity you give it, the slower you go relative to the Earth. So here we are. We're coming up. This is sped up, by the way. This is not real time, because this takes forever. If you ever watch this on TV, you could go and get your coffee and come on back, and it didn't move very much. We're going around the Earth at 90 minutes per orbit. And so as we get closer, the arm will come out, and then there's a special grappling location in the back that holds on to. And if you saw the movie earlier, there's kind of this crosshairs that the two vehicles line up. Now, at this point, Cygnus isn't doing anything. It's all the space station. This is the cupola that they're sitting in and looking out these windows in order to get that plugged in. Okay, so they're using both imagery from cameras as well as telemetry on the arm, and then they're looking at it. So they're making sure that it plugs in nicely. Here's sunrise again, as you can see. This thing probably goes through several orbits before it actually gets there. Now it's plugged in, and so once it is, a lot of time goes by because they have to make sure all the seals are right. They open up the doors, and then, remember, this is free fall. They're all falling at the same rate, so it looks like they're floating. And they're pushing this cargo around. You couldn't see their faces. They had big smiles on them. Then they filled it up, and they'll let it go. Now, here's the part that people don't understand. The safest way to get away from the station is to move out in front of it, speeding up, raising your orbit, which causes you to slow down. And so that's what this is doing. It's raising its orbit, and now the space station, it will go underneath it faster, even though this is at higher velocity because the circle it's going around is larger than the circle below it. That's the astrodynamics part of this presentation that you all can go home and tell your kids. So here it is going backwards now, and now it'll re-enter the atmosphere. That's the end of its mission. We are working on a version that will provide some return, but that's part of a new RFP. So we bake in, this is the end of the presentation, we're coming into the home stretch, and then we'll take some questions. But we do bake in all of our quality. We start in the beginning when we design the vehicle. We work through a number of different milestones that NASA puts in front of us, most notably the safety review panel, to make sure that our hazards are taken care of, that making sure that we don't harm in any way the space station. This is man-rated only on the space vehicle. The launch vehicle is not man-rated. We don't intend to bring people up on the launch vehicle, but since the Cygnus does connect with the International Space Station, it is man-rated. So we give insight to our customer, we give some oversight to our customer in the safety review panel, and then, of course, we have our own internal program where we have to do some checks and balances. Most notably is this executive review, or readiness and certification review. It's a systems approach. It's not just one thing you bolt on. Quality is part of it. Mission assurance is part of it. And then, since safety is paramount, we have to go through these different phases. All programs would. Phase 1, where we just look at collision hazards. Phase 2, where we look at the detailed design phase. And then Phase 3, we go through with every launch. The Phase 3 is, did this vehicle, did we have any changes on this vehicle through obsolescence? Did we make any improvements? And so we have to convince our customer, NASA, that we can actually integrate with the space station. So, originally, this was not bolded, but given the events recently, failure is tangible. We have to pay close attention, and my industry is not the only industry. I have several recall notices from the car manufacturers who have to go out and recall parts. I'm sure that in each and every one of your industries, there are situations that there will be a significant problem that you have to work through, and we hate those, we want to get rid of those, and every day you have to work to do that. So we're very proud to still be part of this mission in space. We will be part of it. We'll get beyond this situation, and we'll fix it, and we'll be better for it. So with that, what I'd like to do is take a couple of questions, or maybe not. Oh, look at that. They'll come around and give you a microphone, so for the help of everybody in the room, if you could wait for the microphone to ask your question.
Hello. Hello.
If you could just tell me your name and what industry are you in?
Glenn Mazur. I'm in the quality industry, QFD Institute. And my question is, in my experience, when doing these quality analyses, we uncover, I won't use the word mistakes, but incomplete requirements from the customer.
Oh, yeah.
And I was wondering if you might be able to share a story with us of how you help them get better in specifying their needs.
Well, you can't get better at telling your customer they don't know what they want. Right? Isn't that it? What we do, and I'll talk about our commercial business, we spend a lot of time with our commercial communication providers. So if it's SCS or Intelsat, and they want to provide either Ka or Ku band communications, they are still working with their market model to figure out, well, where is the sweet spot and how many beams do we need? And our RF folks go in and sit down with them and try to hash out, well, how many beams do you want, and what's the redundancy, and what's the lifespan? And so we will often charge off with our design with incomplete requirements. That's natural in the commercial industry. In the government sector, though, they expect the requirements to be fully understood because the government spends a lot of money and they build these huge monolithic space systems. And so they will often come along and set a set of requirements and then discover later on that the warfighter, in this case, needs something else. And the cost to them is beyond belief. We have to go back in and redesign and do ECNs. So I know through my connections with National Security Space that they want to have solid requirements. The fact of the matter is that with 5 years to build something, your needs change. and you have to have an ability to inject those needs or go to the next generation, and they don't want to wait to that next generation. So I think it's a artifact of my industry, at least, that the customer doesn't always know exactly what they want, and you have to work hand in glove to work through all those issues. And if you have set up your system to allow that, which Orbital does, we can bring late changes in. You know, you saw the Cygnus vehicle. We load the cargo, but we have a capability for late load. They needed a new spacesuit on the station. And so we had already loaded it, and they came to us and said, could you put that in there? And of course we could, because we have a capability to handle that later. So I think we as professionals have to live with the fact that the requirements will never be fully understood, and they'll keep changing. So does that answer your question? Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was curious about the cargo, the quality of the cargo as it's going up, the temperature control, the humidity control, the vibration control.
Oh, yes.
How do you look at that?
Mm-hmm. There are requirements for the cargo. We have just generic cargoes, and they have different kinds of bags. By the way, I didn't get your name and what industry you're from. Ken? And you're a farmer? Oh, okay. For instance, if we send perishables up, they have to be controlled to a certain temperature. It's cold in space. You've been on an aircraft at 30,000 feet and you touch the window. It's cold. It gets a lot colder in space and a lot hotter because the sunlight hitting the outside. So we have to temperature control that payload cargo module, and we have fans on the inside, and we have racks that'll handle experiments to keep them in the environment they need. So that's a lot of, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and that service module provides the power and the thermal environment that they need until they get plugged in and the astronauts pull them out. There are some cases in which we have to late load because it is perishable, because it can only spend so long. In the case of the astronauts, we actually put them in and then we had a delay. We had to go pull them out and then feed them. So we don't send many live specimens up, but that was an interesting one. Does that answer your question? Okay. Someone else? Name and...
Good morning. My name is Clark Westerfield. I'm with Walt Disney World, but in an earlier incarnation, I worked on the Apollo program.
Which one's more fun?
Both equal experiences, I'm sure. Different, but equal. Everybody's talking about these Russian engines, you know, they're like 40 years old. Was it just a cost factor, a reliability factor, or is there some domestic source you could have got the engines from, or even foreign other than Russia?
Well, you're getting a really hard one there. That was, I think they're 30 years old, and they were made for the Russian moon program. And when Russia didn't go to the moon, they mothballed them. They put them in a big warehouse. And then our supplier offered them to us, so they buy them, refurbish them, and give them to us. And there's a big program that goes with this, and we send them down to Stennis, and we fire them to make sure that they're okay. Not all of them are, and we have to work through the quality issues there. So you're asking about the decision to go that direction, and it was multifaceted. It was economics. You know, could it be cheap? Does it fit our business and cost model? It was availability. We could not get a certain engine because there was an exclusivity clause with a different engine that we wanted, and so we had to go to these engines. We didn't want to build a new one because it's about $1 billion to build a new one. And I'm not, you know, some people say $1 gazillion. No, $1 billion is about what it is to build a new engine. And so the United States is now looking at, can we get a new domestic engine? And so back then when we made the decision as a company, all of those factors were taken into account, and the company looked at the risk posture and said, this is the direction we're going to go. Now, that was our first generation. We have recently announced that we've made a decision on the next generation. I don't know what it is because I wasn't in on the make-buy decision, and they haven't released it yet as to what the answer is. But that's an extremely important part because it's key to getting the launch vehicle up. And so I'm sorry, I couldn't give you exact details because I wasn't there at the time of, but is that close enough to an answer you were looking for? Okay. Sir?
Andrew Kirsch, Ecolab, which is diversified company.
Okay.
First of all, I want to say that I find it very humanizing that you not only send up fresh food, but also ants.
Yes.
I think it's, you know.
We can have a
imagining
picnic.
that picnic.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
But my question for you relates to the fact that, you know, describe the fact that your company is using lean, as are, I imagine, most of your suppliers. I've heard some, at times, I'll call it glib definitions of what's CVA versus NVA. How do you manage that with your suppliers so that they don't go too far in the direction of leaning out in a way that sacrifices quality?
I'm sorry, CDA, MDA?
Customer value add, so to you, value added versus non-value add.
My company's perspective on buying from our suppliers, we horizontally integrate not only our vehicle, but we're horizontally integrated where we buy as many products as we can from other people who know how to make them as opposed to us learning how to make them ourselves. So we buy solar arrays, we buy a large number of inertial measurement units, reaction wheels, solar array drive assemblies, things like that. Even the structures come from other people because they know how to do it. So when you ask about, well, are they adding more value than we could add? That's part of the make-buy decision. And so if we have to build up an entire infrastructure to say, let's say we looked at batteries and we decided that that wasn't a good idea. You know, not anybody can make a battery. So we decided to buy it from other companies. And so when we trust those companies to know their business, we also trust them to lean out as best they can. We have had instances where companies have over-leaned, where the product that's coming in is non-conforming, and we send out what's called a supplier corrective action request. And they come back and they say, well, I think we've got it fixed. And we've been around the block a couple of times, and we evaluate that and say, I don't think you've got it fixed. Let us come in and talk to you. And with this particular company, I won't name them, they had leaned it out so much, they even lost the engineers who had the recipe to do it. So they couldn't lean anything. And so we had to go back in and have them put back in place and hire quality and engineering talent to bring their product back up to where it needed to be. We were not the only buyers of this product. So as we did that, we not only helped ourselves, but we helped all the buyers of that product. I have noticed, though, that my company's vigilance of suppliers or sensitivity to problems in suppliers is higher than some of my peers. And so we might go in and say, we don't like that, and the supplier will tell me, well, your peers like it, and they're taking it, so you should. And our answer is, that's our peer, we don't accept it, and it's a fight. And when we do get what we want, our peers get better too. So as I keep saying, this is not just us in the marketplace. We're all in this marketplace when we buy from the same suppliers. Did I get at the answer to your question? Okay, that's a thumbs up. I like that. I was told not to do that in other countries because that didn't mean the same thing as America. I'm not a world traveler, but somebody told me don't do this. Okay, but that's okay here. It's all right here. Anybody else? Okay, I think we've exhausted it, right? Or are you just all exhausted? I'm sorry. Well, thank you very much for being a wonderful audience. It's great to be seeing you all.
Thank you very much, David. We really appreciate it. On behalf of the conference committee and the Aviation, Space, and Defense Division, we'd like to present you with
Thank
a
you.
certificate and a token of our appreciation for your presentation.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.